In the heart of a lush emerald forest, where sunlight filtered through leaves as if painted by an artist's brush, a small dragon named Ember rested atop her favorite perch. The world stretched endlessly before her, fields of swaying flowers, the distant hum of rivers winding their way to the sea. It was a place of warmth, where the air was fragrant with life and the promise of spring. And yet, something peculiar stirred that morning, something that whispered of other realms far from the sunlit peace she knew. Ember was young, her wings still soft from lack of flight, her scales a vibrant mix of copper and gold that caught the light like fire. She had spent the morning chasing her own tail, a game that left her dizzy but delighted. But as the sun reached its zenith, she noticed something strange. A glint of silver against the soft green of the forest floor. A single snowflake, delicate and impossibly bright, spiraled down before her eyes. Its descent defied the gentle warmth of the day, a shard of winter where no winter belonged. It landed softly on her snout, and Ember blinked, startled by its icy kiss. Then, as if alive, the snowflake lifted into the air once more, its glittering surface catching the light and scattering it like tiny prisms. It twirled and danced, as though beckoning her. Ember tilted her head, curiosity igniting in her chest. She reached out a paw, but the snowflake darted away, hovering just out of reach. A faint hum seemed to emanate from it, so soft it could have been the rustling of leaves. Or was it a whisper, faint and deliberate? "Follow," the whisper seemed to say, though no words were spoken. Without thinking, Ember leapt from her perch. Her wings, still clumsy but eager, unfurled to catch her as she bounded after the snowflake. It wove through the air, always just ahead of her, a phantom thread pulling her forward. As she gave chase, the familiar world around her began to change. The forest, once vibrant with spring's colours, seemed to dim. The leaves grew darker, their edges outlined with frost. The air, once warm and sweet, took on a sharp chill that prickled her scales. Ember hesitated, glancing back toward the warmth of her home. But the snowflake paused, as if waiting for her, its glow intensifying in the growing gloom. The whisper returned, louder now, though still no voice spoke. "Follow!" And so she did. The deeper Ember ventured, the stranger the world became. Trees she had climbed countless times now stood like frozen sentinels, their branches weighed down with glistening icicles. The ground beneath her feet, once soft with moss, crunched with a thin layer of frost. Yet despite the cold, an inexplicable warmth stirred within her, a curiosity so fierce it burned away her fear. The snowflake led her to a clearing she did not recognize, though it felt ancient and familiar all at once. In its center lay a peculiar archway, formed entirely of crystalline ice. Its surface shimmered with strange symbols that pulsed faintly, as though alive. Ember hesitated at the edge of the clearing, her claws digging into the frosty ground. The snowflake hovered before the archway, spinning faster now, its light growing brighter with every rotation. The whisper returned, low and melodic, resonating deep within her chest. "Enter!" Ember's heart thudded. She was just a small dragon, barely past her hatching days. What lay beyond this icy threshold? And yet, the whisper called to her, weaving a spell she could not resist. She stepped forward, each movement slow and deliberate, her breath misting in the cold air. As she crossed beneath the archway, a gust of wind swirled around her, carrying with it a flurry of snowflakes. The light from the original snowflake burst outward, consuming the clearing in a brilliant, shimmering glow. Ember squeezed her eyes shut, the cold wind whipping against her scales. When the light faded and she opened her eyes, the world she had known was gone. Before her lay a path of glittering frost, winding deeper into the heart of a land cloaked entirely in snow. The snowflake hovered once more, its glow softer now, but no less insistent. The whisper returned, softer but clear. "Follow." Ember took a deep breath, her wings trembling with both fear and excitement. The frost beneath her claws sparkled like stars. And so, she stepped forward, into the unknown. The air grew colder with every step Ember took, the frost beneath her claws crunching like whispers of forgotten dreams. The path wound like a silver thread through the white expanse, flanked by trees whose branches seemed sculpted from ice. Each step pulled her deeper into a world that felt suspended between realms, silent yet alive with unseen presence. Above her, the sky had shifted from the soft blue of spring to a strange, otherworldly hue, as if dusk and dawn were locked in perpetual embrace. Hints of green and purple rippled across the heavens, faint echoes of auroras yet to bloom. Ember glanced back once, hoping for a glimpse of her forest, but the archway had vanished, leaving only endless snow behind her. The snowflake darted ahead, its glow pulsing gently like a heartbeat. It weaved through the trees with an elegance that seemed purposeful yet teasing. Ember hurried to keep up, her tiny wings unfurling to lift her over patches of deep snow. The path seemed to narrow, hemmed in by jagged ice formations that sparkled like gemstones in the dim light. As she followed, she began to notice something peculiar. The frost around her seemed to shift and shimmer, forming shapes that dissolved as quickly as they appeared. Faces, perhaps, or fleeting figures. A fox's tail, a bird's wings. She couldn't be sure. Every glance brought something different, and each time she looked again, the vision was gone. "Who's there?" Ember called, her voice a tremulous echo against the stillness. The only answer was the faint hum of the snowflake beckoning her onward. The path dipped suddenly, descending into a crystalline valley. Here, the snow glittered as though laced with stardust, and the trees grew farther apart, their icy branches arching upward like a cathedral's spires. Ember paused, her breath misting in the air, as a strange melody reached her ears. It was faint at first, carried on the wind like a memory long buried. The sound grew clearer as she advanced, a haunting tune that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. The snowflakes slowed, hovering as if waiting for her to catch up. The melody's rhythm matched the pulsing glow of the snowflake, each note resonating in her chest. Then she saw them, the footprints. They were faint but unmistakable, trailing alongside the path she followed. Tiny like her own, yet elongated, as though belonging to a creature both delicate and fleet. Ember's heart quickened. She was no longer alone on this frosted trail. She followed the prints, her eyes darting from shadow to shadow, but the owner remained elusive. Was it one of the figures she'd glimpsed earlier, or something else entirely? The prince led her to a frozen stream, its surface as smooth and clear as polished glass. The snowflake darted across it, its glow reflected in the icy mirror below. Ember hesitated on the edge, her claws scratching the surface as she tested its strength. With a deep breath, she stepped onto the ice. The stream seemed to hum beneath her feet, its frozen surface carrying the melody she'd heard in the wind. As she moved, the ice beneath her began to glow, faint lines of light forming patterns like the veins of leaves or the constellations in the night sky. The glow pulsed, guiding her steps until she reached the stream's center. There, the snowflake halted, spinning in place as its light brightened. The melody swelled, a crescendo of haunting beauty that filled the air around her. Ember's eyes widened as she realized the stream itself was responding, its glowing lines converging to form an intricate design beneath her feet. A snowflake, perfect, massive, and radiant. The moment stretched, and for an instant, Ember felt as though the entire world held its breath. Then the light erupted upward, enveloping her in a cocoon of brilliance. She squeezed her eyes shut against the intensity, her body trembling with the force of the glow. When the light receded, the frozen stream was gone, replaced by a narrow bridge of ice spanning a chasm she hadn't noticed before. Beyond the bridge, the path beckoned, winding deeper into the wintry expanse. The snowflake floated just ahead, its glow softer now, like a lantern in the dark. Ember stepped forward, her claws tapping against the icy bridge. The air around her felt heavier, as though she were nearing something ancient, something waiting. Each step brought her closer to the heart of this frozen land, where secrets whispered in the silence, and the snowflake's guiding hum grew ever stronger. The bridge of ice stretched impossibly far, suspended over a chasm that seemed to swallow light itself. Below, a fog of shimmering frost swirled like restless ghosts, their forms twisting into shapes both familiar and alien. Ember's small claws clinked against the crystalline surface as she moved, each step echoing in the vast silence. The snowflake ahead continued its steady pulse, unwavering in its path. As she neared the other side, the icy fog stirred, its restless dance growing sharper, more deliberate. Shapes began to rise from the mist, first amorphous, then solidifying with each passing second. Ember froze mid-step as two towering figures emerged, their forms crystalline and translucent, like statues carved from frozen starlight. They stood as sentinels, barring the path forward. Each figure was both beautiful and fearsome. Their bodies shimmered with 1,000 refracted colors, yet their jagged edges gleamed like blades. Their faces, though featureless, seemed to hold eyes that bore into Ember's very soul. When they moved, it was with an eerie grace, their forms gliding rather than stepping. The air grew colder, sharp with an ancient power. A voice emerged, deep and resonant, as if the ice itself were speaking. Little one, you have wandered far. Few venture into the realm of frost, and fewer still reach this place. Why have you come? Ember's wings trembled, and her voice caught in her throat. Yet the question seemed to demand an answer, the weight of it pressing against her like a winter storm. I don't know, she admitted at last, her voice barely a whisper. The snowflake, it called to me. I followed. The guardians tilted their heads in unison, a gesture that felt both curious and unnerving. The second figure's voice joined the first, softer but no less commanding. To pass, you must prove your worth. The path beyond is not for the timid nor the lost. Do you accept our trial? Ember's heart pounded. She was small, inexperienced, a mere hatchling in a world she barely understood. Yet something deep within her refused to turn back. The snowflake's hum resonated in her chest, steady and unwavering. She nodded. Yes, I'll try. The first guardian extended an arm, and the air between them shimmered. From the frost itself, a maze began to rise, its walls glistening with a light so cold it seemed alive. The second guardian gestured toward it, their voice an echo of the icy wind. Navigate the maze, find the heart. Only then will you know if you are worthy. The maze loomed before her, its entrance a dark, jagged opening. The snowflake floated beside her for a moment, then darted ahead, its light flickering like a distant star. Ember took a deep breath and stepped inside. The walls of the maze were high and forbidding, their surfaces reflecting her image in strange, distorted ways. The air was heavy, and every sound seemed to echo endlessly. The snowflake darted through the passages, but its glow was faint, often disappearing around corners. Ember hurried to keep up, her claws slipping on the icy floor. The further she went, the more disoriented she became. The reflections in the walls began to shift, showing not just her form, but strange, impossible scenes. Flashes of her forest home cloaked in frost. Her own face looking back at her with eyes of silver. A great tree of ice with branches that reached the stars. She shook her head, trying to focus, but the visions lingered, pulling at her thoughts. At one turn, the path split into 3 directions. The snowflake hesitated, its glow dimming as if uncertain. Ember frowned, her instincts urging her to choose. She sniffed the air, searching for a clue, and caught the faintest scent of pine, a memory of her forest. She followed the scent, her steps quickening. The maze grew colder, the air biting at her scales. The snowflake flickered ahead, its light growing stronger as the walls widened. Finally, she stepped into an open space, a circular chamber where the frost glowed in intricate patterns on the floor. In the center of the chamber lay a pedestal of ice, atop which rested a single, flawless crystal shaped like a snowflake. The snowflake that had guided her drifted above it, its hum now a song, clear and resonant. Ember approached the pedestal, her heart pounding. The moment her paw touched the crystal, the entire maze trembled. The wall shimmered and collapsed into mist, and the guardians reappeared before her, their forms towering and resplendent. "You have found the heart," they said in unison, their voices softer now, almost reverent. "Few possess the courage to seek what lies within. You may pass." The snowflake floated to Ember's side, its glow warm and inviting. The guardian stepped aside, and a new path revealed itself, wider and brighter, leading deeper into the icy realm. Ember glanced back once at the maze, now nothing more than a memory of frost, then stepped forward. The snowflake whispered again, its hum soft and reassuring. Ahead lay something greater, something waiting to be found. Ember followed, her steps lighter, her courage unwavering. As Ember stepped beyond the guardians, the world opened into a vast expanse of unearthly beauty. She stood at the edge of a frozen valley, its surface aglow with soft, silvery light. The snow here was not merely white. It shimmered with a kaleidoscope of colors, each flake catching the faint auroras that danced in the twilight sky. The air hummed with a low, melodic resonance, as if the land itself was alive and singing. The snowflake hovered just ahead, its pulsing light brighter now, eager. Ember's breath caught as she gazed into the valley. Tiny figures moved among the glittering frost, creatures unlike any she had seen before. Some were small and quick, darting between icicles like mischievous shadows. Others were tall and graceful, their translucent forms glowing faintly as they glided through the snow. Her curiosity burned brighter than her fear, and she descended into the valley, her wings trembling with anticipation. The closer she got, the more the sounds of the festival came alive. Bells chimed in soft, lilting melodies, their tones echoing like whispers through the frozen air. Laughter, light and otherworldly, floated toward her, mingling with the faint rustle of snow underfoot. When Ember reached the heart of the valley, she gasped. Before her stood a colossal tree made entirely of ice. its branches sprawling upward as if reaching for the stars. Each branch was adorned with tiny lights that flickered like captured fireflies, casting an enchanting glow over the entire festival. Around the tree, creatures danced in intricate patterns, their movements fluid and mesmerizing, like ripples across a still pond. The snowflake led her closer, its hum blending seamlessly with the music. As she neared the tree, the beings turned toward her, their eyes glimmering orbs of frost and light, regarding her with quiet curiosity. One stepped forward, a tall figure cloaked in robes of shimmering snow, its face hidden beneath a delicate mask of ice. "Welcome, little one," the figure said, its voice like the sigh of winter winds. "You have journeyed far to reach the festival of frost. Few are brave enough to follow the path of snowflakes. Fewer still are chosen." Ember's heart raced. She wanted to speak, to ask 1,000 questions, but the words caught in her throat. The figure seemed to understand, for it extended a hand, motioning toward the tree. "Come," it said. "The festival welcomes you." The beings parted, creating a path for Ember. She stepped forward, her awe growing with each passing moment. Around her, the festival unfolded like a living dream. Snow sprites no larger than her claws darted through the air, weaving trails of light that lingered like ribbons. Frost foxes with silvery fur danced in spirals, their movements so synchronized they seemed like a single being. Above, great owls with wings of ice soared silently, their feathers scattering snowflakes that glowed as they fell. The music swelled, and Ember found herself drawn into the rhythm. She moved tentatively at first, her small wings fluttering as she mimicked the movements of the creatures around her. But soon, she was dancing, her body guided by an instinct she didn't know she possessed. The snowflake hovered beside her, its glow pulsing in time with the music. Time seemed to stretch and blur, the festival existing in a space beyond the ordinary flow of hours. Ember danced until her legs trembled, her heart light with joy. She paused to watch the others, marveling at the harmony of the scene. It was a place of pure magic, untouched by the world she knew. As the night deepened, or perhaps as the timeless moment lingered, the figure in the ice mask approached her once more. Its voice was gentle, but there was a gravity to its words. "You have brought warmth to this frozen realm," it said. "Your heart, though small, burns brightly. The festival of frost recognizes you as one who belongs. But tell us, little one, what is it you seek?" Ember hesitated, the weight of the question settling over her. She thought of her forest, her perch on the rocks, and the warmth of the sun on her scales. She thought of the snowflake that had led her here, its dance so full of mystery and wonder. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but sure. "I don't know," she said, "but I want to share the magic I've seen here. I want to bring it to others." The figure inclined its head, a gesture of acknowledgement. Then the festival grants you its blessing. Carry the touch of winter wherever you go, and let its beauty transform the hearts of those who see it. The snowflake hummed brighter, its light enveloping Ember. She closed her eyes as a wave of warmth and cold swept over her, a perfect balance of opposites. When she opened them again, the festival seemed to glow even brighter, its magic alive within her. The creatures around her began to move once more, their dances continuing as if the moment had never paused. Ember gazed at the tree, its icy branches now shimmering with new light. She felt different, stronger, lighter, and filled with a sense of purpose she couldn't yet name. The snowflake hovered before her as if waiting. She nodded, her wings spreading wide, and with a leap she soared into the frost-laden sky. The snowflake's glow guided Ember upward, its light steady as a star's. The air around her shimmered with magic, each beat of her wings sending ripples through the delicate frost-dusted clouds. The valley below shrank, its enchanting brilliance becoming a constellation of silvery lights against the vast white landscape. Yet the song of the festival lingered, a melody etched into her heart like frost on glass. As she ascended, the sky shifted again, the soft twilight deepening into a swirling expanse of auroras. Ribbons of green and violet wove through the darkness, casting fleeting shadows across her copper-gold scales. The snowflake paused in midair, its glow pulsating as if drawing breath. Then, with deliberate slowness, it began to drift, not forward, but upward, toward a shape that loomed above the shimmering heavens. Ember squinted, her breath misting in the frigid air. At first, it seemed like a mountain suspended in the clouds, its jagged peaks catching the ethereal light of the auroras. But as she flew closer, the truth revealed itself. It was no mountain but a colossal tree, impossibly vast, its frozen branches reaching endlessly into the sky. This was not the same ice tree she had seen in the valley. It was ancient, primal, its presence commanding the very fabric of winter. The snowflake led her toward its base, where roots like crystalline rivers plunged into a ground that sparkled as if studded with stars. Here, the air was impossibly cold, each breath sharp and biting, yet it filled her with an inexplicable warmth. The hum of the snowflake grew louder, resonating with a rhythm that matched her heartbeat. Ember landed softly on the frost-laden ground, her claws crunching against the crystalline surface. The tree's roots seemed to pulse faintly, their veins glowing with the same iridescent light that filled the valley below. The snowflake floated before her, spinning gently as though it, too, was in awe of the ancient presence. From the depths of the tree, a voice emerged. It was not a voice like the guardians, nor the festival's masked figure. This was something far older, deeper, and vast. A voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, resonating through the icy expanse like the groan of glaciers. "Welcome, little one." The words carried a weight that made Ember's wings tremble. She stepped forward, her gaze fixed on the towering trunk. The patterns of frost on its surface seemed to shift, forming shapes that told stories too ancient to comprehend. "You have touched the heart of the festival," the voice continued. "You have danced among its wonders and carried its warmth within you. Few are chosen to stand before me. Fewer still are worthy of the gift I bestow. Tell me, little dragon, what will you do with the magic of winter?" Ember swallowed, her throat dry despite the cold. She thought of the forest she called home, the warmth of its sunlit mornings, and the lives that flourished beneath its canopy. She thought of how the snowflake had led her away, not to take her from her world, but to show her something more. "I don't know all the answers," she said, her voice soft but resolute. "But I know that the magic here, it's not just meant to stay in this place. It's meant to be shared. I want to bring it to others. I want them to feel what I felt." The tree's branches quivered, sending a cascade of shimmering frost into the air. The snowflake pulsed brightly, its light mingling with the glow of the roots. The voice returned, quieter now, yet filled with unmistakable warmth. "Then take this blessing, Ember. Wherever you fly, let the magic of winter follow. Let it touch the lives of those who see it, not with the cold of isolation, but with the beauty of transformation. You are now a keeper of frost, a bearer of its wonder." The snowflake spun faster, its light intensifying until it enveloped Ember completely. She felt the warmth and cold merge within her, a perfect balance of opposing forces. Her scales shimmered brighter, their copper hues now laced with delicate patterns of frost that seemed to glow with their own inner light. When the snowflake's light faded, it settled gently onto her snout, a permanent mark of her journey. Ember looked up at the great tree, gratitude filling her chest. The voice spoke one final time, its resonance fading into the wind. "Go now, little dragon. The world awaits your touch." With a final glance at the colossal tree, Ember spread her wings and leapt into the sky. The auroras swirled around her as she flew, their colours brighter than ever, as if bidding her farewell. The snowflake hummed softly, a constant companion, its magic now intertwined with her own. When Ember returned to her forest, the sun was rising, casting golden light over the familiar trees. Yet the world was not the same. Frost glimmered on the leaves, sparkling like stars even in the warmth of spring. Where she flew, tiny snowflakes followed, their patterns intricate and unique, leaving trails of winter's beauty in her wake. And though the festival of frost remained hidden, its magic was no longer confined. In Ember's heart, it lived on, a wondrous pact of winter shared with every step, every flight, every breath.